just watching people whom I admired deal with things on an emotional level that were so much more mature than what I had going on. That was when I realized going deeper for me was certainly much more, I think, attainable. And I found out that I did have sort of an aptitude for that. I guess when I finally went, wait a minute, you need to not read one more book of philosophy. You need to be applying what you already do have in your brain cells. It became a path.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome back to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. I'm Tom Rutledge, and today we got a special guest that I'm really excited about, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. We don't have Alan Berger with us today. With me is our wonderful producer and friend Patrick. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm good. Alan's always watching over us like a benevolent ghost. That's how I like to think of him. Just his big bald head in the cosmos somewhere, just shining down upon us. But I'm doing well, yes.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. Well, the guest we have today is an old friend of mine. Now I'm gonna wander off of myself a little bit in some of this stuff. When I say old friend, it means I've known him a long, long time. But the other thing is, it's always weird to put the word "old" with Jeff because he was always my young friend. He was significantly younger than me, and so he was and Dee Dee, my wife, and I were good friends with him long ago when he lived in Nashville. We had some wonderful times together. So he's my old young friend, Jefferson Ross. He's many things. He's a singer songwriter. He's a painter. He's an artist in many, probably more ways than I know. And I want to have him on here today because we use his music. He was kind enough to let us use his music for our emotional sobriety, kind of intros and outros and that kind of stuff. And I love his music. And through his music, really, I've gotten to know a different part of Jeff than I ever knew when we were hanging out together. And it's I think besides being the songwriter, besides being the artist, and I'll use this to introduce you, Jeff. You're most definitely, and this part I believe you always have been ever since I've known you. You are a philosopher, and I believe so much of what we do as I get older in this business of therapy and of writing about it is philosophy as much as it is psychology. And your philosophy through your writing is beautiful and wonderful and clear and enlightening to me. I'm just with thanks for letting us use your music to help our podcast along. Welcome to our podcast, Jefferson.
Well, thank you, Tom and Patrick. Nice to meet you too, buddy.
It's great to finally meet you.
Yeah.
You were, what I know, let's go ahead and get this part out of the way. Jeff, right. Anybody's interested in the history of me. I don't know if we have anybody in the history of me, but the history of me, other than my wife, Jeff is the only other person present on the very last time I ever took a drink of alcohol. Yeah. We lived in a little yellow house on Estes Street in Nashville, and it was some random evening, and Jeff was over, and we were drunk, and my wife, who had done a strange thing 6 months previous to that, and that is she had decided that she might have a problem with alcohol, and she had gone to AA. which of course ruined my life for that 6 months. Meant I had to go underground with the whole drinking thing. And it's like, but she came home and she said very clearly, "You're drunk," which I thought, I probably even thought at the time, well, that's a pretty safe bet, but she meant it at a different level. And I just got to say that it was, I believe now, I think it's snowing there in Atlanta where you are now, right?
It is.
Yes. I believe it was snowing.
It was cold.
Snowing in Nashville. It was cold because you were out back as I recall you on your hands and knees. On your hands and knees throwing up. And I want to say that I, as a person, I was, and this will show you about how alcoholism works. I was the clinical director of an alcohol and drug treatment center that I'd actually helped design and develop. So it's like I had spent a lot of time doing the work of alcohol and drug counseling, and the best I could come up with is when my wife confronted me was I pointed out back and said, "Jeff is drunker than I am." And that was it. That's all. And apparently that wasn't enough, because as of a couple of days ago, 36 years later, I still haven't had another drink. But what was that?
There was some awful rancid tequila. What was it? Do you remember?
Well, I was drinking Scoresby Scotch. I think that's what we both were drinking, because I kept that bottle around for a while. Yeah,
Bukowski quit drinking, so.
That's right. So anyway, Jeff was there, and Jeff kindly has remained a friend of mine through the years. Although we haven't had as much contact as I wish we had, but I'm glad to be reconnected with you. And Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, talked about emotional sobriety in the early 1950s. Emotional sobriety is the development of real maturity and balance, which is even beyond the physical sobriety of alcohol and drugs out of our system. He says the development of real maturity and balance, which is to say humility, in relation to ourselves, to our fellows, and to God, however we define God. And one of the best ways I've ever heard emotional sobriety defined was by our buddy, Dr. Berger, who says it's a real maturity, a condition in which the best of us is in charge of the rest of us. And so my belief about this is that we spend so much time talking about, there's so many of us that are in this discussion on our podcast or in our group who basically our background is alcohol and drug dependence or eating disorder kinds of things, or other kinds of more familiar addictions. Listening to your music, Jeff, I think you're an emotionally sober man. So that, and by the way, that always comes with the humility and the absolute no expectation of perfection. So there's no pressure that comes with that. That's an observation, not even a compliment, but certainly not an accusation. So and this is where we come down to the philosophy. It's like, since you and I were together a long time ago, I think we both must have been on journeys of our own in which we have learned a lot about life.
I would say that's probably the truth. Yeah, I certainly have, and I know you have as well. I mean, I think that I've really, there's no easy, Patrick and I were talking about, we said, Alan Watts, we want everything to have this linear progression. When Alan Watts said, the world's a squiggly place, you might as well just get squiggly with it. And I think letting go and trying to go, well, I screwed up yesterday, so I'm probably going to be worse today. Or, I need to kick myself for that. When you just realize the world's a squiggly place, and the best thing you can just do is to get in that dance and be in. The thing that's helped me the most is just to be in the moment. And not worry about where I am 5 years from now, or make some responsible choices financially or however you want to do that. But, I think I'm not one person, I'm several. I've got an inner child. I've got an old grumpy old man. I've got them all. And I've kind of let them learn how to get along together. I don't let inner child drive the car, but I let him start my work for me. Started on that. So I think that helped me in just recognizing who I am, and who I am are several little units that
all that you are. Yeah.
I mean, and they seem to get along a lot better than they used to. I think recognizing that they're there, giving them some credence and recognition, just like, okay, I realize you're there. Now do your thing and try to play well with the others.
Well, and that's where I think that, Alan's, Dr. Berger's, the best of us in charge of the rest of us is a good one. But it also, I would want to put the caveat in there that doesn't imply that the other ones are less, or not less the best. It's like they're just different, and it's a team, and it's really interesting that you launch off there, because it's like. I mean, that's just absolutely right in line with what I have been, and my experience. My guess would be, I would ask you this, if your experience is the same as mine, which is if you really want to know how stupid humans are, it's like I've been learning the same lessons for years and years and decades. I just keep learning. It's not like there's a new lesson. It's like I just have to keep getting it over, and it's repetition.
Yeah, well, we learn that in music. It's there are only 11 notes in the Western scale, and once you learn them, you can't go, well, I've learned them. It's like,
yeah,
it's how that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, life.
I'm sorry, we're both talking over each other.
Because you could take any type of simple parameter and go, well, that really is all there is. If you're just going to scratch the top little, skin of it, but not trying to reinvent the wheel every time. It's just trying to learn how to have a little more dexterity with the wheel you've already been working with all along. And that sounds boring, I'm sure, to a lot of folks, but in my experience, it's the truth, because you don't go farther, you go deeper. And once you have the sort of courage to look a little deeper, then you might possibly, as a side benefit, go a little farther.
Right. I love that. Don't go farther, go deeper. It's like, and the part about the boring part, I did a eating disorder workshop thing with a colleague and friend of mine for many, many years. And one of the things that she used to say to our clients toward the end of our weekend workshop would be, you have to be willing to do the boring part. You have to, and I think that's the case. I learned it. I used the metaphor of learning magic. It's like when I was learning to be a magician back a long time. You have that certainly at a far more of a masterful level with music. Is the idea is. You tell me if my metaphor is correct, but I tell people that if I were to have Eric Clapton give me guitar lessons on a weekly basis, and I showed up for every lesson, but never practiced anything I ever learned, I would not play the guitar. When you say that about the notes, I think of how we often think, well, I've gone through the 12 steps of recovery, for instance. I've got those 12 steps down. It's like, well, how I think of those, it is a box of tools. It's not like I've used the hammer. Yeah, yes. You're probably better at this than I am, but one of my great frustrations in life that I hope to do something about, if I ever have the willingness to do the boring part, is learn to drive a damn nail. I'm horrible at driving nails. It's like you think it's a beautiful example of simple things that are not easy. It's like I bend that nail every damn time or hit myself with the hammer.
I'm not great at that either. I've got astigmatism. I'm the world's worst pool player on earth. Now I've tried to play 100 times in my life, to much embarrassment. Golf, same thing. And I want to blame it on my eyesight. It's probably just, I am just not very good at that. But I think, certainly the way we see things it affects our ability on that. I I mean, I cannot play pool. I'm like you. I really, and I do, I'm a guitarist, so I do watch my hands a little bit, but I'll mess a nail up every time.
Well, that makes me feel better. And see, that's another principle in all of this as well, too, is part of why we ask people to join us here on this podcast or in our Thursday support group or just to reach out, and whether it be with us or somebody else, get support is it really is nice to know we're not the only one. And for most of us who've been pretty critical of ourselves, in life, that we've had a period of life part of time, or have periods where, we're feeling isolated in part because we think we're the only one who's feeling this shit. And it's really nice to hear that we're not.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, I think I'm into all types of art, as you've pointed out. And I think the main mission of art is to help us not to feel alone. That's art's, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and, a song's worth 1,000 words and all that too. And I think a lot of reasons to paint a picture but if you can connect, I think the point is to connect. If you do connect, then someone out there is going to realize, hey, I'm not alone. And that's a good thing to be doing in your life, I think.
That's beautiful. I like that.
At what point in your recoveries, did you recognize that the work of recovery is about going deeper? It's not necessarily better, but it's, that there were deeper levels to plumb. And was that something that occurred to you guys fairly early, once in your sobriety, or was that like a late arriving?
Jeff's not an alcoholic. Jeff's not one of us in that way. He's not an alcoholic. It's like he was a young kid. He probably, I don't know, I'll have to check. He probably I was a bad influence on him in some ways, but no, Jeff's one of those great examples to me where when I got sober, I thought for sure that I knew, it was one more distraction for me. I thought I knew everybody that was an alcoholic along with me. And I was so fucking wrong about so many people. I would think, oh, that person, no, I mean, I don't know your story with that, Jeff, but my general guess is you did not go the way I went with that. You didn't have the brain chemistry I have for alcoholism, and you probably grew up.
Yeah, slowly but surely. I mean, yeah, I'd like to think it. I had a lot of help. And back to your question real quick, though, Patrick, about going deeper. Man, that's something that it was almost like an epiphany for me. And I'm not trying to get off the subject of chemical sobriety. We're just talking about maturity or emotional sobriety in general. I had some good help with my wife was really strong about that. Just watching people whom I admired deal with things on an emotional level that were so much more mature than what I had going on. That was when I realized going deeper for me was certainly much more, I think, attainable. And I found out that I did have sort of an aptitude for that. I guess when I finally went, wait a minute, you need to not read one more book of philosophy. You need to be applying what you already do have in your brain cells. It became a path. It's a squiggle we've been talking about, but it was the path for me. It's been that way in my career. It's been that way in my worldview and my travels, my relationship with my wife and my daughter. Yeah, I think it. I don't know when I had the revelation of aha, but I remember when it started, when that path began.
Well, I'm a big believer that the best insights when we tell our stories are with hindsight anyway. It's like we don't know. We don't generally have the insight first. We look back and go, I think about this time in my life. I look back. I think I was kind of getting it about around that time. It's like, I mean, I've had many insights in my life where I thought, this is a life changer. But I don't know of one of those that basically, survives in my story that would say like it was. It's like the stories that I tell that I would say like are pivotal moments in my life are they may be kind of, big moments, but sometimes it's sort of innocuous and not that big a deal. But you realize, I think I picked it up about that time.
Yeah, that's right. It's like you didn't realize it was a red letter day, but it was a red letter. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we go back all the way back to that day you were, and by the way, I want to make it real clear to everyone listening, Jeff was drunker than I was. It's like, let's be clear about that. I might have been messed up in a lot of ways, but I'm pretty good, have good perception about drunkenness. It's like, but I mean, of course, that was a scary ass day for me. It's like, I hated that day. I didn't like what was happening.
Fear of change.
Yeah, I love your song called "Change" for that very reason. It is such a because it is all about the fear of change. And by the way, we'll do this before we finish tonight. But if you guys are listening today, you go to Jefferson's. Go look for his music. Go to his website. Go wherever his music's available and listen to this guy's music. It's amazing. I had no idea that you were that talented back in the days when we were friends. I knew you were a songwriter. Well, you had a song with, what was the group that you had the song with that was the kind of hard rocking group?
Hatchet.
Molly Hatchet. Yes. Yeah, you had that and you had a gospel thing. I always thought that was a weird.
Yeah, that really should have pointed you in the direction of where my mind was at the time.
Molly Hatchet and then a gospel cut somewhere. It's like, what? Well, it shows a man who's willing to do what he's got to do.
Yeah, that's it. And that's one thing that I just wanted to make a lot of money. I'm like the average. I think I was like 21 years old when I met you. And I a talent for it. I had a knack for it, but my goal was to go farther, not deeper.
Yeah.
And things kind of changed when I turned all that around a little bit. But my heroes were I tried to start emulating in a way my heroes who were sort of yours at the time. Guy Clark and Towns and Jerry Jeff and all that. Those people that we were listening to at the time. I was always like, well, I could never do that, but I could do this hit song on the radio. And finally just let that go and went, no, wait a minute, just write something real. Hemingway said, just write one true thing and the rest will follow. So that's kind of how that changed. I don't think I got any more talented, but I did put in the 10,000 hours and that whole thing that you talked about, and changed from going farther to going deeper.
Well, what it tells me about you, or at least what I've made up about what it tells me about you, Jeff, is that, that I had, because, both of us living in Nashville, we've known a lot of songwriters and recording artists and things like that. It's like what I realized when I really discovered your music after, I was sober a long time and you were long gone. It's like, I thought, man, here's something he had that I didn't have, and that's humility. It's like, I mean, you didn't, I've known a lot of people with a lot of talent who basically you're going to know that in the first few moments that you're meeting them, and some of them are quite talented, but it's like, some of them not, but it's like I would go back and think, what did we talk about? It's like, and I go like, I don't know really, but we had a lot of fun.
Sure.
I had fun with you.
Oh, sure. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot from you. Well, we talked a lot about what we were reading at the time, I think. And we talked, there was a cool new age bookstore in Nashville, which was sort of unusual. We used to hang out. There was all kind of cool ideas.
That's right. Magical journey. Yeah.
From you that we didn't sit around talking about people a lot. We talked about ideas. And, that was great fun for me because I'd always wanted to do that. And I subsequently have had friends throughout the years that would do that. But I realized that that's what it was. It was a friendship built on exploring ideas, and there wasn't anything too crazy or too whatever to talk about. And at 21 years old, and you were a little older, I really admired that. And it's set a pattern, I guess, for my.
It was really quite acceptable and normal in our world around us, especially around in Nashville with the creative world we were around and stuff. I was doing a lot of reincarnation work and past life regressions and stuff like that. And it's like, Well,
it was real appealing at the time because there wasn't none of those books prescribed a whole lot of work. You just had to sort of envision it or believe it or whatever.
Oh, that's the truth.
Start on a path. There
right.
was a whole lot of, hey, there are going to be a lot of boring days where you're just going to have to hunker down. None of that was in any of that stuff. But that's okay. Because that became evident after a while. But at least if your imagination is big enough to go, you know what, I can make a beautiful life for myself, the world, the others around. So that was I think it was an empowering, probably a smart thing that it's matured,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of my frustrations, I have this with my old college friends that, thank God, with technology as it is, through the years we reconnected, and with people that I've known in the past, is one of the frustrating, and I have come to believe that mine is not unique like anything else, but it's like one of the things I've discovered is apparently my alcoholism really is not just about, I don't remember something because I was drunk that day. It was like it really left me with quite a foggy, vague set of memories about things. So that I find when I'm talking to old friends, sometimes that they're much more likely to remember more specific things than I am. And I'm going like, so it's not like I was just blacked out the whole time, but it's like it did. It's what, as I take an inventory of the damage the drinking did for me was it really, which I think is also is a pretty interesting way of saying that I really was by drinking the way I was drinking, I really wasn't showing up for my life.
Well, when you're walking through your life with a large amount of time with a low grade hangover, you're spending a lot of energy just sort of getting through the day.
That's a good point.
That's it. Have a whole lot of time to filing away the intricacies of what's just happened. That's a common thing.
That's it. Well, now Patrick, by the way, is a writer as well. He's among other things a screenwriter. And but I do want to ask you this, Patrick, on behalf of Jeff and I, have you read The Talisman by Peter Straub and Stephen King?
No, but damn, that's a pedigree. I should get on that.
We recommend it together highly.
I need to reread that. That's it's a real metaphor for a lot. Yeah.
I just came to my back porch one day, just opened the back door, and the book was just sitting there. You had left it for me. It's like it was.
Yeah, that's a long, long time. Yeah, that's a real metaphor. Although what they did, this is before the internet and all that, but they did find a way. This is probably 82 or 83 when they were writing this book, and found a way to link their computers together. One of them lived in Maine and one of them lived in Connecticut or wherever. Way to link their computers. So one of them would write one chapter. I would read it. The next one would write the next chapter. There was no outline, no nothing. They just wrote this book, and it ends up being like a 600-page, kind of a page road trip story. Some of it's fantastical and some of it's not. It's a really interesting piece. Surprising people don't talk about that book more, especially those who like.
Oh, I had forgotten. You're right that I had just absorbed that into today's age. They didn't have email. It's like.
No, there was no, anybody, the average kid hearing that now goes, well, that's nothing. But those guys had no way. They didn't even have real computers. They had word processors. They had some kind of way to hook their word processors.
That's amazing.
Right. This number one best-selling hit. No.
Guys like Stephen King are obviously an inspiration to me because he got sober and he kind of unlocked this reserve of energy where he was able to harness whatever energy was going towards this like addicted craziness. And, and he applied a work ethic to his talent. And, you
recall, there's a thing where they drink the grape juice and it changes them and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He breaks all that down at how he was fighting with drinking alcohol at the time and was using that as sort of a metaphor for magic. And then he had to kind of rethink all that later on.
Well, even in the book, it turns out you don't need the juice to flip to the territories.
That's what he found.
Forget you heard that from us, by the way, Patrick. You'll be surprised when that happens.
Spoiler alert.
It's like, yeah. Because I think what you're saying, Patrick, is true. Period. I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, there were many reasons. One was just have a reunion with Jeff, but one of the reasons I wanted to have Jeff on too is because we do have more and more people who come to us who are responding to our podcast, who are coming to the group and stuff like that don't have the same history that you and I and Alan have of substance abuse. And it's like, and one of the things that I've thought from early on in my recovery is what the hell do people do who aren't alcoholics? Because I began to be aware of how I've learned so much through this process, through this program. And it's like, and as it turns out that Bill Wilson, the founder, a wide open thinker himself, had this early on in the probably late 40s, but he wrote about it in the early 50s that, this is what I call it is facing the dependencies, but the big dependency beneath all the other ones. And it's that emotional stuff that and the stuff that Alan talks about the, adjusting. And it goes back to what Jeff was saying at the outset about living. It fucking all comes down to living in the moment. And and what, I wanted to make a point about that too. I had a client in one of my workshops one time that basically somebody was saying, well, what do you do with somebody who's saying they're living in the moment, but they're doing that irresponsibly? And I didn't have a very good answer to that, but this participant in the program we were doing did. And what she said was planning for the future and learning from the past are both present tense experiences.
Yeah.
Planning for the future, learning from the past, both present tense. I don't remember her name. This is one of those hindsight things. If I had known I was going to use the hell out of that quotation from her, I would have found out her name and be sure that she's getting credit for it all the time, because I didn't say that, but I repeat it constantly.
Hopefully she's not too litigious.
Well, now you've brought it up, and if she's listening, Lord, I hope she doesn't know what litigious means.
I bet she learned that a while back.
Yeah. Well, but living in the moment, that's what it comes down to, man.
I think in the moment is not walking around hypnotized by the moment. No,
opposite.
It's being, it's recognizing and then being right here in the middle. It's like I like this word integrity. Hear it a lot now, and my wife and I worked a little program not too long ago, attended, and it kind of brings in this whole idea what you're talking about, sort of integrity. I was living in a lot of guilt about integrity. Folks were saying, they were sort of conflating my whole life. I guess I conflated integrity with morality, with, oh, you're a bad person because you don't have integrity. I'm trying to get to how I kind of had my little epiphany on paper. And they explained to me, and I really love this, that integrity is not a moral choice. It's just if something works or not. If you're standing under the roof of your house and it's not falling in and busting your head, that roof has integrity. It's not a choice whether or not to hit you or hurt you or whatever. It's just something that works. If someone if I'm constantly 15 minutes late, well, I have no integrity. It doesn't mean, or I don't have any integrity concerning that. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I mean anything toward you. It just means that our relationship is not working properly because I have to make you wait. So that's another thing when I really realized that I didn't have to conflate a bunch of moral guilt that I'd gotten growing up in Pentecostal church and all that. When I could just realize that if I could just have integrity in my work, in my marriage, in my fatherhood and all that, it didn't involve a whole bunch of morality judging one way or the other. I could just make sure that I did, that I said what I said I was going to do, and have integrity. And that really helped me a bunch with,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just works. It's like, And that's the other thing. Well, and now that I think about it, it's one of the things that the three of us will have in common is, not because we are all focused on language. I think it's fair to say on behalf of all four of us, fascinated by language, love language, and some, we build things with words. Yeah. It's like they're like our little building blocks. Look what happens when I put these words together. So often what I've learned, I used to think it was a mistake that I was an English major who ended up being a therapist. And then later I found out, again, hindsight, hey, that worked. It's like, because first of all, I learned about listening to people's stories. There's a wonderful Gestalt therapist, Irving Polster, who wrote a book. It was a great book, but I just love the title. Every person's life is worth a novel. Your song called Stories, and we use that, right, Patrick?
Yeah, we use stories to close the show.
I see you sitting there with your guitar and just sending us all out to go out back to our lives, and then when we come back, bring you stories. That's the essence of the imagery, at least I have, of that. So tell us about that song. Do you remember writing it?
I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of songs that I spend a lot. I've got a brand new album coming out in a couple of weeks, and there's some songs I spent 2 years on it, and some songs I spent about 4 minutes and 30 seconds on.
Gotcha.
Story was one that I knew I had to have a final song. I always try to close these albums out with not just having the leftover song, but have a song that sums everything up. And I knew I had to write about that, and that's what it was. But I do love that song and feel like that's one of the most human things we can do is.
But what you're saying about how you wrote it, that's perfect. You're dismissing us until we come back together again. It's like and one of the words I mean, if I write self-help books, and people have looked at me strange all the time, but when I'm helping somebody with writing something, even in a self-help book, or so, what I'll say is that, a chapter needs to have a good punchline. It's like, they go like, what? But it's like, it's that you have that sense of that. And this is, and I'm not very musical. I don't have much rhythm, I don't think, but it's like, I definitely do words with sound. I read things out loud and I go like, okay, this has to have this kind of sound. And now that you say that, so that song's at the end of which album? You remember?
I think it's at the end of the Isle of Hope album. I'd have to look up.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Yeah, that's all of your albums are amazing. So, how much of his song do we play at the end of our podcast? Do we play the first verse, or we play the whole thing?
I think we play the end of it. We play like the last 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
Okay.
I think the last little bit it repeats the first verse. That's a smart way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we could play the song in its entirety at the end of this episode.
Okay, let's do that. The first one I had suggested that we use on the front end of this, I don't know if we do or not, because you're in charge of that, but it's clues. I love clues.
Yeah, I believe we start with clues and then we end with stories.
Okay.
It's a Jefferson sandwich.
It's now I don't know if I ever told. I think I probably told you this, Jeff. It's like, do you know who John Shelby Spong is?
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. He's a retired Episcopal bishop who's a best-selling writer of books like Rescuing the Bible from Fundamentalism, Why Christianity Must Change or Die, many, many things. A very wise and controversial figure in the Episcopal Church. As you can imagine, but there was one of your songs that I sent to him and suggested to him that it be. He's become a friend of mine. He reviewed one of my books and supported me through some of my commentary writing during the George W. Bush age, and he's been very kind to me. And I sent him, and I'm blocking on the name of it. It's the one where you meet the guy in the bar. And you say, at the end, you're saying, all I can tell you is what they told me.
It's, I can't remember the name of my song now.
Makes me feel better that you can't.
I know the song you're talking about.
Sing it.
Trying not to lose my mind. is the name of
it. That's it. Trying not to lose my mind. It's like that's so I sent that to him and said you should listen to the rest of Jefferson's music, but I said I think that you should use this as your theme song because he is all about inclusion and all about, you know, he was on the front lines early on, back when we were just, you and I were drinking and on dealing with women in the church and gays in the church, all this other stuff. So I hope maybe he makes use of your song.
Well, I hope he does too. Yeah, that I do remember writing that one and then thinking just how confused and frightened I was about so many things growing up. I mean, there's a lot of good I'm about growing up religiously, I suppose, but it just gets confusing. You know, we're supposed to be diligent and work hard, and we're supposed to, you know, consider the lilies and don't care what happens the next day. I mean, there's so many conflicting things that we're supposed to turn the other cheek. Then we're supposed to be a warrior. We're supposed to do all this. So I had to be about 25 or 26. I was just confused as hell and didn't know where to put that. So that's where that little tune came out.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. It's now. So, okay, before we finish, so tell us about your new album.
It's called Southern Currency. And I've always wanted to write a little love letter to and from the South, with warts and all, the South as I see it, South as I love it. And it's because I think a lot of people outside the South either see us as a bunch of hateful Gomer Pyle people, or if you're from the South, you want to portray it as everything's all moonlight and magnolias and it's all just wonderful. And so I to write a very honest account. It's 11 songs and each one of them has a state. Alabama's the first one. It has its own song. Georgia has its own.
Oh, wow.
Whatever.
Okay.
And, some people, we're getting really good response from it. I'm sure some of my friends from Alabama might unfriend me after hearing it, but I think people are going to who know what I do are going to dig it.
Well, so is it available now?
It's actually officially out March 1st. Okay, but kind of sometimes iTunes messes up, puts it on a little early, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I checked yesterday.
Okay.
Still,
okay. But we'll put something in the show notes on this so that people can go find it.
Please do. Yeah, it's just, I would say just send them to iTunes right now because it's not even out yet. Okay. Well,
I have a criticism though that I want to ask you if you make a change. Hateful Gomer Pyle is an oxymoron. Now, see, a lot of people don't know who Gomer Pyle is, but Gomer Pyle was the farthest thing from hateful. Yeah. It's like I get about what we're talking about, how we talk, but it's like that's not good to Gomer. That's not good to Jim Neighbors. It's like fair enough. Find a better suggestion. Maybe Ernest T from the Mayberry.
Well, I do. I guess what I mean is I think a lot of people see Southerners, they're smiling on, you know, I don't mean to besmirch the memory of dear Jim Neighbors, but they did smiling and you know, setting the world on fire with another. I mean, I tour outside the States and I'm in Europe a lot, and they all like, we love you as a person, but you know, ain't y'all seem to, you know, get it together. And, you know, I think that some of them do have it together. There's a political bent. You know, they're people on the left side of the political aisle in the South. There's like Norman Blake says, he goes, I'm an old lefty. He goes, we're not extinct. We're just outnumbered. And that's kind of how it is with people looking in on us thinking it's, I guess that's my point. People looking in on the South thinking they're all one way, and they're not. They're
right. And so you get the culture, the culture as a whole can get lost in that, black or white, all or none thinking. It's the
English are all this way, or the French are all this way, California this way, New Yorkers, whatever. And when the fact is, that's just lazy thinking. And without me standing there going, y'all are a bunch of lazy thinkers, it's like, well, here's some ideas. Here's a song about this. Here's a song about that. Make up your own mind.
I love it. So what we have is a picture of Jefferson sitting there going like, okay, do I want to tell people they're a bunch of lazy thinkers, or maybe I'll just write some songs and make an album? Yeah, I think I'll do that. Which one will I do?
Well, I think it's a beautiful concept, and clearly there's institutional rot and the old guard clinging onto power and causing a lot of havoc. It doesn't just occur in the South; it happens across the entire country. So
yeah, that's true. There's no doubt.
Good point. So, we will include some of this stuff in our show notes, so the people who are listening to this go and find out how to get a hold of Jefferson's work and look at his paintings. I have that wonderful gift you gave me, the painting of Kurt Vonnegut here in my office. It's are your paintings for sale online? Or
they are, and I don't. The reason I don't make more of a thing about it on my website is I do them to order. I don't have a bunch of prints. I don't think they print well because there's a lot of texture in those pictures. Mm-hmm. So what I do is, this is the lazy man's way about it, but I post stuff on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. People tend to like them. And generally what they'll say is, wow, I really like that, but could you do a Dr. John? Could you do a or something like that? So I kind of paint the order. And
okay.
I think that's website, but that's pretty much what I do.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing, and you're right about the texture. It's like I think it would be. I think a print could be really cool, but it's like it would not be at all the same as having.
Well, it's commercially cool for me to do it that way, but they just don't do right. And the frames,
yes,
just as much a part of it as the picture, and that just doesn't come out well in a print.
Right. So what are they painted on? It looks like a part of a door. What?
Yeah. Well, I think yours is on a piece of just plywood, right? Yeah. It's plywood. Well, size they are is I go to Home Depot and they've got they've got these 2x2 pieces of plywood on those shelves, they have with the number. I buy 5 or 6 of those at a time and just bring them home and kind of season them a little bit, let the elements get to them, and then paint them up and frame them. I used to do them on barn tin, and I've got a bunch of them that I did. That's a pain in the neck to work with.
I bet.
And I was doing them just on barn tin for a while. These old farmers up in Middle Tennessee would redo their roofs on their barns, and they'd give me the tin. And I did that and I went, it's a whole lot easier to go to Home Depot and just buy a piece of plywood and deal with that.
Because I was going to say, this is not a canvas. I know that. I can tell by
no.
It is your canvas, but it's not a canvas.
Yeah. Metaphorically.
Yeah. Well,
before we wrap up with Jefferson, I just wanted to be sure I asked him one more emotional sobriety question. You talk about the role of integrity. I wanted to know what you thought about flexibility and how that's informed your kind of latter stage philosophy.
Well, I posted this the other day. It's like, blessed are flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape.
I'm Gumby, damn it.
Yeah. My girlfriend calls me that when I wear a green shirt.
To me, everybody has a line they draw in the sand that they're not going to cross. Tom's not going to drink any of that nasty Scoresby's or whatever. But being flexible, at the age of 43, I became a father, and I learned what flexibility was. It's you're not flexible to let them run out in the street. That's not open for, let's try this. Every day is different. Every 5 minutes is different. And you better be able to respond flexibly rather than rigidly, or it's going to be a mess. So I say flexibility is way up there. It keeps you limber. It keeps you limber emotionally. I think it keeps you limber in your body because you're thinking about being. So yeah, that's a good one.
I love it. Great question, Patrick.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jeff, for doing this. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me, Patrick. Again, nice meeting you, Tom. It's always a joy to talk to you, however we can do it.
Okay. It's like everybody who has a friend in the past who wants to get together, you should get your own podcast and interview them.
I'm a big supporter of that.
Yeah.
Here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. Go out and shake the world like a willow tree and bring some stories back to me. I hope your days are sweet and sunny, and you shoot the bull with pockets full of extra folding money. And may you fly your flag in victory and bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. 'Tend your life, tend your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.